Good morning. I'm Russell Rogers, he, him, and I serve on the board of directors. Welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a community of youth, adults, and children of many diverse theologies held together by covenant, not creed. Together, we share the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. May you know deep welcome and belonging in this place. To share a request for today's meditation, please place it in the chat box before the opening hymn or add it to our meditation bowl. Please gain consent before you use someone's full name, and the meditation bowl is in the Soul Work Center. Welcome to any visitors. We are so glad you are here. Please join us after the service for a 12-minute intro and tour. Margie will be leading the tour, and it will start over here by the fabric wall. Margie is holding up a sign in the back right here, and she'll be over here by the fabric wall after the service. For those in the room, please join us at our social hour after the service in the social hall. Welcome to our church. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
I'm Reverend Jack Gady, your associate minister, and my pronouns are he, him. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place, together we make it a holy place.
I'm Jerry Yans, and my pronouns are he, him. Sorry about that. When I prepared This I Believe talk some years ago, I was struck by the amount of work it took to dig deep and prioritize aspects of my life that seemed worth sharing. The process of deep sharing, expressing our innermost values and beliefs to a whole congregation of people, didn't come easily for me, but it was definitely worthwhile. I'd encourage anybody who hasn't done it already to put it on your list. I was raised with 3 siblings in a family that didn't talk much about important personal stuff. There were 2 unspoken rules in the family. Number 1, nobody ever had problems. And number 2, you don't ask personal questions. Of course, if you don't ask the personal questions, you probably don't learn about the problems. Conversation around the dinner table was typically about mom's latest recipes or dad's woodworking projects. I don't ever recall hearing, "What do you think about that?" Or even more importantly, "How do you feel about that?" There was never a mention of religious beliefs or spirituality. When I got to college, I met students from all over the country who carried on a different level of conversation. Discussions of important issues ranging from personal to global were happening all the time, but I felt inadequate trying to participate in those discussions. I wanted to share deep and meaningful thoughts, but I just didn't know how. I wasn't even sure I had meaningful thoughts. But in an effort to show that I actually did occasionally think about things, I made a habit of posting a quote of the week on the door of my dorm room. My favorite was a line from Peter DeVries: "Deep down inside, he's shallow." I liked the line for its cleverness, but in retrospect, I think I posted it as a critique of myself. It captured my frustration and sense of inadequacy when it came to deep conversations. I'm pretty sure Peter DeVries was actually talking about me. In 1987, I joined a men's group formed by some guys at my church. 7 of us met every other Saturday from 7 to 9 a.m. with the goal of discussing important personal issues. The ground rules of the conversations went beyond typical social banter, not only permitting, but encouraging deep sharing, probing questions, and challenges. Sports and cars were never topics of conversation in this group. Insights I've gained from the group have helped me understand the importance of deep sharing and how to do it. 37 years later, I'm still meeting with these guys every other Saturday. I want to believe that my ability to engage in meaningful conversation has improved at least a little bit over the years. Our church's This I Believe service is an invitation for members of the congregation to share their stories, and for the rest of us to receive those stories with thoughtful attention and gratitude. As I light the chalice, I want to thank David Radke and Nikki Moyer in advance for their deep sharing today. Please join me in the opening words written in the order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now please rise and body your spirit for our first hymn, number 34 in the gray hymnal.
I invite all the children and youth forward to hear this morning's story, or maybe those of you who are young at heart or just want to come a little closer to see what is inside this box. I have the privilege of sharing this morning with you about my belief box, and I think you're going to want to see what's in it. We have a practice here at this church where people share more about their beliefs and their values. Sometimes this takes the form of a "This I Believe" message, as we'll hear later today. But sometimes it takes the form of someone describing their belief box. So this morning, I want to tell you about mine. First of all, because I believe in the power and value of communities, I have this paper chain. Here at church, we make a lot of paper chains. It's often our way of making visible the fact that we are a community of people with differences, like how this chain of papers has different colors, but we're also interconnected. They're linked together, right? What happens to you affects me. What happens to me affects you. In the language of our UU values, we call this interdependence, and it is very important to me. We can also pass these along. So I'm going to start over with you, and you can pass it along all the way down, okay? So next, I have this acorn. You can't see it because it's not real, it's imaginary. And the reason this is important to me is because our imagination is very important. It inspires our creativity, and let me just pass this on to you, Cohen. You want to pass that around? Part of why this acorn is important is because it is a seed from which a whole tree grows, which ever since I was a kid has fascinated me. An acorn will fall from a tree and then just grow another tree. So I keep this acorn in my box because I believe in the power of growth and that we're all lifelong learners. And we can all cultivate the acorns in each other. I also have in my box a chalice with a little light here we can light up. This reminds me of the importance of taking a breath, setting aside some time, especially when we're together here with other people. We set aside time as special, as sacred. We do this before our worship services, before our RE classes, before Wednesday night dinners, board meetings, everything. We try to start our time together with the lighting of a chalice to say, this time we're sharing together is special. I'm going to pass this along too. Next, I have this dinosaur. I think it's a brontosaurus, but someone probably will correct me if I'm wrong. The reason I have this in here is because I am pretty fascinated by science, and even though these creatures lived forever ago, I didn't get to meet any of them. Kind of sad about that. But it reminds me of the importance of science and the fact that it's also a toy, because I like to play, I like playfulness and puzzles. So this reminds me of that. When I'm done studying science, I can also take some time to play. Want to pass that around too? And last but not least, I have one smooth stone. It's very beautiful. This one was polished very smooth by a machine, but many stones are polished smooth just by time and water and sand and other rocks. And I grew up in Minnesota, not too close to Lake Superior, but kind of close. And being next to the Great Lakes has always fascinated me, these huge bodies of water, and there's just so many rocks that look a lot like this one that get worn smooth over time. So sometimes life can have jagged edges, and those jagged edges can hurt sometimes, but also through time, they can get smoothed out. And even though those pains might still be there, they can become more manageable. So this smooth stone is the last thing I have in my box to indicate my connection to the earth and my connection to a long arc of time that all of us are part of. So if there's any one thing I want to leave you with today, it's what might be a sense of wonder about what's in your belief box. Many of you probably are already thinking about that. What would be in my belief box if I had to choose just 5 items? And what would those items symbolize? What are the most core values, important principles to me? So I hope you all leave this morning thinking about what might be in your belief box. And if you find out, feel free to share it with me. And now we will sing our children and youth who are registered for their spiritual growth circles out to their classes. Please join me in singing Go Lift It Up, number 1057 in the teal hymnal. Thank you, Rose. Will you join me for a moment of prayer or meditation? Here we are in this particular and unique combination of people that might not happen again, about maybe 120 here in this room and 27 households on Zoom. Let's just take a breath together as we settle into this moment. Take a moment to bring your attention inside yourself, checking in your head, your heart, your spirit, your body, all the way down to where your body is connected to the floor, supported by the earth below us. Feel yourself supported there as we let our hopes and our prayers weave together. In this season, we especially feel the presence of thresholds, warm days and cool nights. Many of us have begun new chapters. These dog days of summer are turning into the season of fall harvest. The Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, begins on Wednesday. Pay attention to these transitions and what they're doing to your body and your spirit. There are many forces bigger than us at work. May we stay settled and feel ourselves grounded right here and right now in this space and in this time. There's so many things clamoring for our attention, ratcheting up our anxiety, preventing us from finding a peaceful and contented sense of ease. Maybe we're struggling with depression or loneliness or addiction or any number of mental health concerns. Maybe we or someone we know is experiencing a health crisis or a crisis of faith. Whatever is happening and whoever is needing support, this is the time to focus right there and to lift them up for support. And maybe this person is you. If that is the case, I hope you feel lifted up this morning. This morning we hold in light and in love Reverend Jessica as she mourns the loss of her beloved pet companion Rufus, who passed away on Monday. May his memory be a blessing to her and to all who knew him. And many of you here have people weighing on your hearts and your minds. Right now, let's take a moment to name out loud into this space their names, which we make holy by our presence. Trusting that we can hold more together than we can alone, we say, may it be so, and amen. Please remain seated for our hymn, I Know This Rose Will Open, number 396 in the gray hardcover hymnal.
Just a couple of quick announcements before we collect the offering. First of all, don't forget that after today's service, Reverend Jessica will be sharing more about her vision for her second year of shared ministry with us. Think of it as a state of the church conversation. Come learn more about where we are and where we're headed. Next week is our annual Blessing of the Animals Sunday. At the 9 a.m. service, you're invited to bring photos of your pets. At the 11 a.m., you're invited to bring your live animals with you to the service, appropriately contained, of course. It should be a lively and interesting service. And the following week is Coming Out Sunday. Join us as we celebrate the LGBTQ folks in our congregation and celebrate some of our coming out stories. And please plan to attend a special presentation from our stewardship consultant after the second service on that day, October 13th, from 12:13 to 1:15. It will be a short but packed 45-minute presentation on our stewardship goals. Lastly, the NLD, the Nominating and Leadership Development Committee, is hosting a leadership development program that will be starting this Saturday, and we're looking for more people to fill the slots. Registration deadline is this Tuesday. Contact Prill Snelling to register. Thus ends our announcements. Twice per month, our offering goes out the door to support local nonprofit organizations whose values we share. And on the other Sundays, like this one, our money stays right here to support the mission of this congregation, to grow our souls and serve the world. There are a couple of ways you can give today. You can use the text to give feature, numbers in your order of service. You can give on the website, or you can place cash or a check in the offertory basket. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we live together. The offering will now be gratefully collected.
Our first This I Believe speaker this morning is David Radke. He and his wife Melva have lived here in the metro area since 1980. They have 3 kids and 2 grandkids, and they raised their kids at Unity Church, Unitarian in St. Paul. They made their way up here to White Bear UU around 2010 and have been part of our community since that time. Please welcome David up to share more of his story.
Good morning. My name is David Radke, he, him, and I'm a member of the congregation. We are a storytelling species, and we use metaphors. English major here. A search for truth is actually a search for a story, a metaphor that rings true for us and helps us deal with life as it happens. When I was a freshman in college, I took a course in ancient philosophy, and the course primarily covered Plato and Aristotle, but we spent a few days talking about the philosophers who had come before Plato. And Thales of Miletus is the earliest one of these. Thales and the rest of the pre-Socratic philosophers were all searching for a unifying first principle to explain the world, rather than just attributing everything to the whims of the gods. Thales maintained that the first principle of all things was water. Others argued for fire or air. And our professor assured us that this was just laying the groundwork, that this wasn't going to be on the test. Don't worry, he said, nobody's ever going to grab you and say, "What did Thales say?" Everything's water. So, of course, that's the part I remembered. And then along came Plato. And don't worry, this won't be on the test. Instead of a single uniting principle, Plato broke it down into smaller parts, easier to understand. He imagined a split, material on one side that you can see and feel, and versus immaterial on the other hand. So we have mind versus body, mass versus energy, particle versus wave. And this physical, spiritual split eventually became the world's dominant philosophy. But that split doesn't sit right with me. Once I've separated the spirit from the body, disembodied the spirit, so to speak, now I have to put it somewhere. So metaphorically, I re-embody the spirit, I incarnate it by giving it a name. And I call it my soul, or the Holy Spirit, or maybe even God. But after we do that, it's easy to start believing in the metaphor as its own reality. We study it as its own thing, and we forget that it's only a part of the puzzle. Like your toys, if you take them out to play with them, you have to put them back together when you're done. So, back to being an English major, a complete sentence requires a noun and a verb. My hand waves. My hand is physical, it's a noun. Waves is the action, that's the verb. But what happens to the action when my hand stops? You can't separate the movement from the thing that is moving. And movement is inherent in our bodies. Our nerves feel cold or heat or pain and send signals through our body to our brain. The energy that runs through our nerves is made up of physical particles, electrons, hopping and skipping and jumping from atom to atom to atom to atom. All of our thoughts and beliefs are created in our brains by nerve cells, neurons, firing chemical transmitters across little gaps at other neurons. It's a physical process. All of our thoughts arise from the physical activity of our brains. Now, I've always loved the Unitarian chalice as a symbol, and I was particularly impressed the first time I came into this room by our church's chalice, this one right here, with the physical hands holding the spiritual flame. The Spirit can't do anything without the body to do it in. The Spirit doesn't exist without a body to exist in. The body and Spirit are one, being of one substance with each other. So let's try another metaphor. We have a seed lying in fertile soil, and instead of God reaching out its hand and touching the seed and causing it to grow, I believe it's in the nature of the seed to grow, and the growing and blooming and blossoming is God. God is not the noun. God is a verb. And now a little about me. I never knew my father. He was killed in an accident a few weeks before I was born. But growing up, I heard stories about him from my mother and from my aunts and uncles. And my older cousins all remembered him fondly. He would play with them, tease them, and pay attention to them. And then each one of them, privately, individually, would lean in and quietly confide, "Oh, he loved all his nieces and nephews, but I was his special favorite." Now think about that for a minute. He made each one of them feel like they were the special favorite. And that's the spirit of my father that I try to live up to. When our daughter left home for the first time, she got a tattoo. And I have to describe my mother's reaction to her granddaughter's first tattoo, and to each and every new subsequent tattoo after that. My mom would snort in disgust and turn her head away. But then, be a little sidelong glance and a little turning back, and the corners of her mouth would twitch as she was trying to look stern. And then a deep sigh and a head shake. And then a smile and a big hug. And this perfectly captures the essence of my mother, her spirit, her soul, her complete and total acceptance and non-judgmental love in spite of her disapproval. The only immortality we have is in the memories and the stories about us that linger in the minds of the people we leave behind. I realize I'm very fortunate to have these memories and these stories of my parents. If either of them had been more troubled or had left unpleasant or abusive memories, my life and my outlook would be very different than it is. And when I think about them now, it would be very easy to picture them together, smiling down on me from some immaterial heaven. But that would be a metaphor of separateness, of there and here. And I prefer metaphors of unity. And there are any number of metaphors of unity that we can choose from. Light is a great metaphor. You can't see light itself, but you need light to see. And experiments prove that at the quantum level, light behaves as both a particle and a wave. In fact, there's a song lyric, a wave and a particle were walking side by side. One turned to the other, said, which one of us am I? Which one of us am I? And speaking of song lyrics, music is another great metaphor. When you hum a song in your head, the neurons in your brain are firing at a rate equal to the frequency of the notes. So if you had little electrodes in your brain connected to an amplifier, the speaker would play the song in your head. The music doesn't come from out there and make you move. You are the music. And personally, I keep coming back to Thales and water. Water exists in a trinity of forms, as ice, as liquid, and a vapor. You can't step into the same river twice. The water is constantly flowing and changing and moving. And you can't capture a river in a bucket. So when my body dies, its particles will disperse, and my soul, being of one substance with my body, will disperse as well. Like pouring that bucket of water back into the river. So to wrap it up, this I believe, everything's water, God is a verb. Thank you.
Nikki Moyer is our second This I Believe speaker this morning. Her mother was a member here in the earliest days of this church, and Nikki herself got married here in our church back in 1962 when we met in that little building down the way. She's been singing in the choir off and on for more than 30 years, and she also has 3 kids, a few grandkids, and a husband that had also been involved here over the years. Please welcome Nikki Moyer up to share more of her story.
Well, hi. Hi. I'm Nikki Moyer. I go by she, her. And I'm here to share my This I Believe, or maybe my Looking for the Answer story. Thank you, all of you who have done stories in the past. I always find echoes of my own story or pieces that I share with you. I was born Nikki Cohen, or Nicola Cohen, actually, into a diverse working class family a long time ago. We were diverse, meaning Irish, English, Danish, Jewish, and Egyptian. My mother, Phyllis Cohen, was a lifelong Unitarian, and my dad, Hi Cohen, was overseas till I was 5, so I met him when I was 5, and he was Jewish. I grew up with over the years, some Unitarian church going and some Jewish Sunday school. But ethnically, I see myself as a Jew, like my dad. And spiritually, I think I'm more of a mystic, like my mom, more like my mom. Meaning I see God or higher power as immanent in all of us. It's in the energies inside us, plants, animals, planet, universe, the whole deal. Maybe it's more like the Native American concept of Great Spirit. So, do I believe in God? I always had my doubts about the God idea. When I was a little girl, I had lots of questions, like, if there's a God, why isn't he still doing miracles? Where is he? And why can't we rely on our own ideas about right and wrong, our own common sense ideas, to be good persons? Why would we need a God to tell us right from wrong or make us be good? And why would God be male? And eventually, the biggest question for me was, why the Holocaust? How could I trust a God that would let that happen? However, I also could see that if there's not a God, then the burden is on us to be good people. That's a lot of responsibility. But if we want to be good people, we need to rely on ourselves. A bad thing happened to me when I was about 10. Some older boys invited me to stay after school to play pirates, but then they tied me to a tree, threatened and insulted me about being Jewish. I had no idea what they were talking about at age 10. I had never heard of American religious or racial hatred or intolerance. And the memory of this attack followed me years later as I took part in civil rights sit-ins and demonstrations. I carried that in my heart. When I was 12, excuse me, when I was 12, I got to ride on a Greyhound bus all by myself to Des Moines, Iowa. I think it was Des Moines, where I went for a 4-day Quaker youth seminar on the meaning of God. Man, did we get into discussion. It was just really a vital interaction and fun. And there was one idea that stuck with me, was the idea or the suggestion that maybe man created God in his own image instead of the other way around. Maybe man created God. That made a lot of sense, and it explained a lot. It's like how people all over the world who have had maybe no exposure to any kind of monotheism or Christianity, those people create gods and create rules of right and wrong. So maybe it's a universal human trait to do that. Anyway, having decided that a deity was not to be trusted, it seemed I'd be better off relying on values of reason and logic, common sense and kindness, justice and truth and courage, what I've come to call practical spirituality. That is, in any situation that's the least bit troublesome, look for the values. What are the values? And then act accordingly. So in other words, figure out what's right and wrong and do what's right. If I did this, I would never, ever have to apologize to anybody or regret anything I did. What could possibly go wrong with that? And mostly it went well. I began going to Al-Anon and using their 12 steps as a guide to how to solve problems and get along with people. However, being my own higher power was self-defeating. I really didn't have the right job qualifications to be a higher power. Sometimes I even messed up big time. So I did end up at times having regrets or having to apologize. And there were things I honestly could not do with just logic. I needed some kind of powerful help. Easy peasy, let's go out and look for a higher power. Write a want ad, so to speak. So I figured that out. See, you can tell I'm Unitarian. This is how we do things. Okay, the qualifications of a higher power. One is it's not me. I was already overworked. So it's not me. It's good. It's benevolent. Third is it has to be powerful, has to have some power. And it's available. So, not me, benevolent, powerful. And here I remember talking to my son Josh about Lake Superior. And we were comparing notes, and I said, you know, Lake Superior has this kind of higher power over me. And Josh said, yeah, he said, it's paradoxical. Lake Superior lifts me up and settles me down. And I thought, that's the effect that we need, you know? But I also think guidance has to be in there somewhere. Okay, so not me, good, powerful, and available 24/7, any place, anytime. So it turned out I have many higher powers, or maybe doorways to the Great Spirit. Lake Superior is one. Any horse I can be around. Physical activity like hiking, playing, dancing. 12-step meetings are a doorway for me. Music. And when I think of music as a higher power, I remember being in a civil rights march when I was, 13, 14. And it was a whole bunch of people I didn't know, mostly adults, and they broke into song and sang, "We Shall Overcome." Man, I was overcome. It was just, I didn't know people even did that. Anyway, so music is a higher power. Journaling and using a meditation book to figure things out. Church, community, acts of social responsibility, loved ones, nature, lots of higher powers, and always available. So how do you use a higher power? In Al-Anon, they call it seeking conscious contact with your higher power. So go there, be with, ask for help or guidance or comfort, listen well, and actually follow the advice instead of just saying, oh, that's interesting. You know? But actually follow the advice, notice and appreciate the results. And lastly, honor and thank the higher power instead of thinking, I'm it. So express gratitude. As for church going, I recall my mom taking me to Unity Church in St. Paul way back in 1947. I know I don't look that old, right? Thank you. Thank you for laughing. But that was an awesome experience for me because the young people in the congregation took part in doing the service, and I was just amazed at that. Anyway, so that was a long, long time ago. And then over the years, I adopted and revised, of course, many of my mother's beliefs, and also the wisdom and courage of my father. So when I landed here at WBUUC as an adult, it felt familiar. I felt welcome, a sense of belonging, like I was at home, and I was with my peeps. So what do I like at WBUUC? I like to hear, and I get to hear, challenging ideas and I get to be with others who are on the same kinds of journeys to being or becoming who we are called to be. I love and enjoy both the differences and the similarities. We're kind of like a garden full of all different colors and kinds of flowers. It makes me think of that song, All God's Critters Got a Place in the Choir. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but that's how we are. We're all like a bunch of God's critters. I find I have to say something about Jesus. Although I'm not a Christian, I am a Jew, and I see Jesus as one of our boys. Okay. I have read a lot about Jesus, the Jesus of history, as a consequence, and I have come to admire and love this man as I think he was, his dedication and his message of love. My understanding is he believed that if he would follow the scriptures exactly, that God the Father would come down and all of us would love each other. Great dream. 3 years ago, I got a cancer diagnosis out of the blue, and all of a sudden, here was mortality staring me in the face. And it took me a while to calm down, a bunch of days. I did a lot of conscious contact during that emotional storm. I guess I had planned on living forever, or at least into my 90s, so it was a shock. So, consulting with as many of my higher powers as I could, I came to the realization, hey, I'm not dead yet, you know? So, but I need a set of rules on how to live my life that I have, how to do that. So I put together a set of rules or principles that I could follow easily. Number one was no whining, okay? So I could feel sad and angry and afraid at times, but not to stay there, no whining. Second thing would be to be open about it, not keep it a secret, especially from people that are close to me. I wasn't going to just cover it up. Thirdly, actively live my life and treasure it. And then 4 and 5 kind of go together. Don't spend time doing things I don't love, and do spend time doing things I do love. It's logical. Another thing, number 6, remember that we all die. Now, doesn't that seem unbelievable, really? You know, it's a hard one. But be realistic. Really, I'm not the only one that has to die. We're all dying eventually. Number 7 was to keep my sense of humor, and I discovered that the cancer diagnosis had kind of altered my sense of humor a little bit. I remember riding in a car. My daughter Molly was driving. We were out by the Grand Canyon. We took a drive from Sedona up to Flagstaff, which is a climb of about 3,000 some feet, and it's all this hairpin turns and scary stuff, kind of. And it was bumper to bumper traffic both ways. And of course, no parking lanes or anything like that. And we were about halfway up, and we had a sudden snowstorm, and this was, I think it was summertime or spring or something. It wasn't expected. And the highway patrol stopped all the traffic. So we sat there for about 2 or 3 hours, and we got about 5 inches of snow, and it was really lovely. It was very pretty. And then the highway department informed us that now it's okay to move on. And I had this sudden realization that I was on a crowded, dangerous road with a whole bunch of people. Now, as Minnesotans, think about this. A whole bunch of people who did not know how to drive in snow. And you wouldn't believe people with their wheels cramped, spinning their wheels. And I looked down over the edge, which was about a 2,000-foot drop. And I told Molly, you know, there might be some things that are a lot worse than dying slowly of cancer. That was the first time I had any gratitude about that. Anyway. So keeping my sense of humor was one of the rules. And then lastly, to keep on with seeking conscious contact with my higher powers. So that's been doing me pretty well. But meanwhile, what about death? I do not believe in an afterlife. I believe when I die, I die. I believe that if I live on at all, it will be in the memories of people that I have touched, hopefully in a good way. And maybe some of you here, who knows? So thank you for listening. I'm always open if anybody wants to talk about life, the universe, and everything.
Please rise and body your spirit as we sing our closing hymn, number 108, Our Life Flows On in Endless Song. Our lives flow on in endless song. I hope you take the time this week, this month, to think about what's in your belief box or what you value or believe, like Nikki and David did, and have the boldness to share it with others. Go in peace.